Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Tech Smart. I am your host, Flo Nicholas, and we talk all things tech that are happening right here in New Hampshire. And today we have another fantastic episode where we're going to talk about cybersecurity. It's a hot topic right now, so a lot going on. So I'm really excited to have my guests that are here from Pulsar Security. We have the CEO right here, Patrick, and he said Hynds like ketchup, right?
But none of the money.
Right.
Yeah, just the name.
And then we have Daune, Laflotte. I'm sorry, I'm saying Laflotte. It's actually
Laflotte.
Laflotte. I wanted to say Laflotte,
right?
It just sounded
Very French Canadian.
French.
He's not that fancy.
Yeah, I'm
right,
not that
okay.
fancy.
We'll
No.
just keep it simple. So, Patrick, you're the CEO, and Daune, you are the CTO.
Yes.
Love all these fancy acronyms.
Easy to spell.
Easy to spell, yes. So there's a lot going on when it comes to cybersecurity. And I almost feel like this year has been one of those mind-blowing years for cybersecurity. So let's start with what in the world is going on?
So cybersecurity is a war that is escalated every year. So we were just looking at some code from 25 years ago for an unnamed client. And what we see is what was state of the art back then is it's kind of like the way we look at old vehicles from the early, late 18th century.
Right.
It's constantly evolving. The attacks are evolving, and what's happened is it's spilled over into the civilian world. It's spilled over into the small business world. It used to be that the hackers went for the banks, the hackers went for the governments, the hackers went for the high net worth individuals, and so a lot of this is old hat for them. But now, the cyber war, which is what I like to talk about, it is real, and everyone is attacking everyone who can. And the idea that the war in Ukraine has kind of illustrated this. A lot of people were afraid that, well, if Russia really gets mad, they're going to really go nuts. Well, they just really kept just attacking us as much as they could. They were attacking as much as they could before. And so there's no reserve in the cyber war. Everyone who can hack and wants to hack is hacking. And so we're now starting to see that it's coming to the fore because everybody has to defend themselves.
Well, and the barrier to entry into actually making money, hacking people and organizations is super low now. I mean, there are companies out there you can literally just buy malware from. So you can go out and buy a ransomware virus. And then you can test your ransomware virus, and then if it doesn't work as well as you want it to, you can send it. There's a company that will do support for you, and they will test it for you, and they'll say, oh, well, this would actually infect more computers if you did this and did that.
Right.
And you change those little things, and then you deploy it, and there's a company out there that will monitor how fast it's spreading and say, oh, well, it's spreading not quite quick enough, you should do these things. And you really didn't have to write a line of code.
And that
all
didn't
you had to
exist
do
a
was,
decade ago.
and so that it's really hard to keep up as an individual at this point, never mind an organization.
So, during COVID, I think we kind of saw this really surge in, oh my God, technology, right? We're like, we got to be on the cloud because we got to be able to access, like, how are lawyers supposed to continue to help their clients? You got to have those contracts. And now we're seeing the legal industry. Now everything is cloud and AI and CLM tools, right? And the same thing with when our kids were home. They're now, doing remote classrooms. So we've seen this technological advancement, right? And this dependency. Right?
We've recruited everybody into our world.
Right. Now we see AI.
Yep.
Everywhere we go, everything is like AI. I called it like the new Frank Red's hot sauce, right? It's like everywhere.
Right.
But although it's beneficial to how we do business, automation, doing things faster, big data, but it's also beneficial for the bad guys.
Yes. Yes.
Do you think that our new dependency on technology has any impact with what's going on in the cybersecurity war?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. So every innovation that we've had in science, we've turned into weapons. Every medicine we've turned into poisons. It's just the nature of the beast. Everything that we can use for better banking, we can use for better hacking. AI is similar, but we're in the very, very advanced piece of AI, but it's still the beginning. I don't think we're close to the middle or the end.
Yeah.
And so there's still a lot of vulnerability. And we're seeing this with OpenAI GPT. That
the chat program
garbage
is awesome.
in, garbage out.
Yeah.
If you put in something that is bad, flawed, wrong, you'll get out something that's bad, flawed, wrong.
Right.
And so AI isn't magical. We still don't have conscious AI. If we had conscious AI, different game.
Yeah.
We'd be fighting the Terminator Wars and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we're still a long ways away from that. So now we have domain-specific AI that can find things, can write viruses.
Yeah, it's actually impressive. So I don't know if you've seen the OpenAI project.
I have seen that,
chat.
and
Yeah.
now we have all these AI avatars that are blowing up on social media.
The Lensa thing.
The Lensa thing, which actually cybersecurity experts are also warning about that.
Yes.
Having your facial data all over social
We're
media.
real killjoys. We
Yeah.
take everything and
Is that
turn
right?
it into...
It's terrible. Don't use it.
You guys just kill everything.
But we've seen it with the new ChatGPT program
Yeah.
with OpenAI, where we've seen security researchers like ourselves go in and say, oh, I have this virus that I've written in Python. Can you rewrite it for me in Go? Can you rewrite it for me in C++?
So I can deploy it better against
It
these
will
systems.
actually
Goodness.
rewrite it, and the code is unique enough that it's not picked up by antivirus. So we've seen, I saw one campaign where somebody said, hey, I'm trying to break into a bank. Can you give me a very convincing phishing email that I would send to members of the board? And ChatGPT wrote a fantastic email about, why you, with enough links to things to click on and why you would want to click on them. It's fantastic. So we're starting to see, although AI is not going to take over like breaking into places or even defending places, we're starting to see researchers and hackers start using these tools to augment their own skills. So I think that'll be the first stage.
It's still the arms race. We're still in the arms race.
It's still in the early stages, but I think that what has been accomplished right now is just kind of like the appetizer.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, and let's be honest. I mean, some of that, the avatars, the quality, and some of the art, the quality is like ridiculous.
Yep.
It's amazing. But we also have to be aware of the benefits as well as the risks. Right. And you guys, now everybody's going to be, please do not go to the chat box and try to figure out how to rob a bank.
So
just don't.
One of the problems that we have is most people understand physical security. So everybody, we all made it out of adolescence, so we know when to lock our doors, when to stay off the street. We know how to not get hit by a bus. And everyone is pretty well suited to that.
Right.
We now need the same kind of street sense in the cyber world for everyone. We didn't need that before. And that's, again, because the threats are starting to metastasize in more ways. AI is a fantastic tool, but it's not a panacea for defense or for attack. So for example, one of the things that we do quite often is we'll do what's called a red team engagement. With a red team engagement, a large company very often, smaller companies whenever possible, have us attack them like we're China or Russia. Now we don't, drop a tomahawk on them or anything. No. And we don't kidnap anybody.
Right.
No.
But we do pull out all the stops, do phishing, do open source intelligence, and we go and try to hack them. And far too often we can get in, and far too often their sophisticated AI-based detection tools don't catch us.
Correct.
And that's because we're quiet and we're not noisy. And one of the things that you see is, people worried about China and Russia, and you should worry about them. They are the source of a lot of this hacking.
2 of the top 4.
But who's better, the jewel thief that makes headlines by getting caught, or the one that you never hear about?
Right.
Stealth mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when I was doing research about AI for cybersecurity is that continuous breaking in. But I think you guys mainly focus on the red team, but I think a lot of the research I see is you need the red team and the blue team who are kind of breaking.
We test the blue team.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
They don't like us.
But that's what's needed, right? That's what's needed to also help the AI system get better at understanding and keeping up to date with the trends that are going on. Because hackers are not going to use the same methods all the time, right? They're going to find sophisticated ways to do like what you just mentioned. Be quiet about it.
Sure.
They're not gonna come through the front door and say, "I'm here."
Right.
just hand over the information. No, they're going to go through the back door.
Well, we
Yep.
should talk about the level of threat. So
Let's do it.
one of our presentations that we do pretty regularly when we're trying to educate people is called the Pyramid of Threats. And I think I came up with that about a decade ago.
Yeah.
And at the bottom level is...
Back when nobody cared.
That's right. So my grandmother liked it. No. So the bottom layer is probably, and the numbers are absolutely wild guesses, but I believe there are hundreds of millions of script kiddies, what we would call script kiddies. A script kiddie is a person who wants to be a hacker and wants to have street cred and wants to make a name and wants to show off. And they go on the internet and they find an exploit that's old, something that's been around for a while, and they find a script that will let them use it against any website in the world. And they probably get infected with something when they download it.
Most
That's
likely.
almost all the time.
Yeah.
But then they just pointed at every website in the world using a script. And that's why we call them script kiddies. And a lot of times they are kids. There's been some really sophisticated hacks by some 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds.
17 and 18-year-olds, yeah, Uber.
So some of them are dangerous, but most of the script kiddies they're neophytes, and what they're looking for is it's the equivalent of walking through a parking lot and trying door handles. If the door's unlocked, they're a thief. If the door's locked, they're just a kid who's not doing anything. So they need someone to make a mistake by not patching, not having up-to-date systems. And so our advice to our customers is patch your systems and have up-to-date systems.
Right.
And they say, well, I'm going to pay this company just to have an upgrade. Yes, because they're constantly increasing the security. There are threats now that didn't exist when that was built, and the architecture no longer supports it. So it's kind of like you wouldn't have a door from the Middle Ages.
Right.
Okay? Because anybody could get through it. It's the same thing. You need modern software for modern systems, and you need to patch it. Now, I got dissed in England. I was in London the other day, and we call it patching, and they call it updating.
Yeah,
So you have to watch the language here. So I don't know if you have a
Here it's patching.
large London audience.
Yeah, I know, right?
I do have a lot of people from my network, so.
Excellent. So that's the first level, and that's easy to understand, and they're going after everyone. They literally will take the script and run it against every IP address on the internet.
They can find.
So, and they're just trying doors and the thing. The next level, there's fewer of these, but there's probably tens of millions of them, are the hacker with a grudge, the stalker, the technical stalker. They're not really hackers. They're somebody who's in IT, someone who wrote a little bit of code in college, somebody who knows enough to be a little dangerous, but they have a grudge. They don't like their past employer. They're going to be a stalker against somebody in their family, in their life. Those people have a lot of time. They have more technical acumen, and so they're going to be a little more sophisticated. With those people, you need to have good passwords because they might guess your password. They might have watched Mr. Robot and seen you can just use words. What's the date of birth of their kids and what's their dog's name?
Right. What season are we
So
in?
they're more dangerous, and there's a lot of them, but not as many as the script kiddies and not as dangerous as the higher levels. The next level are the criminal syndicates. These are the people who are trying to make money, the ransomwares. And they're the ones that are causing us to really pay attention because they're starting to go after homes. They're starting to go after civilians. They're going after smaller businesses. So they're the ones that are launching ransomware. They're the ones that are doing all the phishing. They're the ones that are, not all the phishing, but a lot of the phishing. And they're more sophisticated. And you need firewalls to stop them. And you need, as we go up, there's more. And then you get to the nation state level organizations, but that aren't nation states. So like Equation Group, what's the Happy Panda, Desert,
They have some
whatever.
unique names.
Yeah,
I've some real unique names.
So they're called APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats. And they typically are organizations or companies that work for governments or large multi-billion-dollar institutions. And in that same category are things like Anonymous, LulzSec, the hacktivists. These are groups of people who are very good, very high skills, who have money, who can buy the $100,000 tools that it takes to do the really fine things. And they're really dangerous. But they're doing the bidding of some government or they're doing the bidding of some billion-dollar company. And we try to be we're them. We try to be them. You can decide whether we're them or not. And then the last level is nation states. And if a nation state's after you, we say the only defense is prayer.
Yeah, there's not much you can do there.
Well, a nation state, even the smallest nation states in the world, can put $1 billion down to get you. And so try not to get on their bad side. And we've seen the results when they'll buy a house next to you and befriend you and we're talking about, but but there's very few people going to. But if you understand the pyramid of threats, you understand where your risks are, you understand what the mitigations are, and so that's how we try to talk to people about it.
Right. So what we normally see in the news are like the big names like Uber,
Yes.
which I think I saw something posted that Uber was hacked again through a third party.
Yeah.
And I'm like, again? Like I thought this.
What day is it?
Like, right.
Exactly.
Like, it just happened. So that kind of raises a question about people who are doing businesses with third party.
Sure.
And how can they protect themselves? Like if I'm hiring a third party and I'm collecting data, from really sensitive customer data, what are the things that I should ask before I even start working with that third party?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That bleeds a lot into what we call supply chain protection or supply chain attacks. So we see a lot of these supply chain attacks where you purchase a piece of software and it's cloud oriented and you put in all your data and now it's up in the cloud. Well, somebody else has access to that. It's the company you purchased it through and you're paying the monthly subscription or whatever it may be. We've seen attackers in nation states now starting to target those heavily because why breach one customer when I can breach this supply chain and have access to hundreds of customers worth of data? It's a bigger target. There are some very simple questions we always educate our customers in things you should ask. Like if it's a sizable, if it's not like, hey, I bought a copy of Office and I write Office Word documents, you're not going to go question Microsoft about Office and what they do with OneDrive. But if you have a pretty good relationship where you have customer data, financial information or whatnot, you should be able to ask the company things like, do you have security code reviews? Like, you don't need to be the person who can read through all the code and make sure they're secure, but how often are they done? Like, are you guys actually...
Can I see the last one?
Yeah. Are you guys actually having someone look at the code and make sure it's secure? How often do you have red team engagements or pen tests? Like, who tests your security?
Right.
And how often does that happen? Right, exactly. So there's a lot of organizations we've dealt with where we're kind of the first people coming in and the software's been running for a decade. And you're like, okay, but nobody's looked at cybersecurity for this application. So those simple questions like what's the vendor doing? What are they doing in terms of security? But one of the other things I always like to put in there is how long does my data exist on your network? If I stop being a customer, would you get rid of it? Is it removed from all the backups? Is it still there? Because 10 years from now, if you get breached, I don't want my data to be able to be accessed. And who at your company has access to my data? Ideally, the answer is nobody. It's encrypted at rest, it's encrypted at motion. You don't need to worry about it because nobody has access to it but you. But that's normally not the case. Somebody might have access to it.
Exactly.
So these are great questions to ask any third party you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, it's Twilio. I think that's essentially what happened to them, right? They were able to go in stealth mode, then come through the front door, and it seemed like it just triggered.
Oh yeah.
Like a domino impact, unfortunately. But let's talk about that, right? The Twilio event, because normally we're used to the emails, but I think the way their employees were tricked was texting.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the new method of attack that's on the rise, right?
Well, voices also. I mean, there's many different vectors.
Yes, but one of the things Patrick always talks about is this arms race, right? And this is the same thing with texting. It used to be you could just send an email to someone and have them click on something and you'd get access.
Right.
And then we said, well, what'll stop that? Microsoft and Google have said 99% of those phishing attacks can be stopped if you implement 2FA, multiple factors of authentication, so text to your phone. So now what's happened is you've moved into we're already waiting for a text on your phone to authenticate to something. What if I continually try and authenticate to it and at 2 a.m. you keep getting the
oh my God, that's been happening to me with
it's been the source of some late attacks.
What's that? Oh my God, what's that website? PayPal.
Yes.
I've been getting some weird text
Shut the phone
messages
off.
with codes, and I'm like,
Do
I'm
not
not
accept it.
answering.
Yeah, exactly.
I know I did not
But
purchase
they're
anything.
going to get you fatigued, or you're going to be in a church, and you're going to need to shut it off. Just shut the phone off.
Well, and that's what happened
wow.
with Uber. So with Uber, one of their support techs, it was 3 a.m. and he was like, I don't know what's happening. It's probably my laptop trying to authenticate, and he just clicked OK.
And they got access.
And then they got access to the network. So that's the next sort of stage in this arms race is they've said, OK, you've trained everybody now to click OK on that. Do you want to allow them to log in?
Right.
So we'll just keep sending you that message until you say yes.
You click on it. You're
OK.
just like,
the next level of
quiet.
sophistication.
Yeah.
That-
Smishing.
Yes, and I don't know why I have a hard time saying that word. So, I mean, what's the solution? Because One article I read, it says, hey, there's a global shortage of cybersecurity professionals, over 3 million.
I have a solution, but I don't think you're going to like it.
Okay, well.
If we shut all the computers off,
Yeah,
that would solve the
and
problem.
that's it, we're done.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
But no, seriously, let's talk about this, because they're saying there's a shortage, and there's like 700,000 right here in the U.S. alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I had a gentleman who was looking for a job. He had all his certifications and all that stuff, but he was struggling to get work. Then I was talking to the head of computer science at Manchester Community College, and I, said the same thing. Oh my God, there's so many jobs for your students who are doing the cybersecurity program.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I have students right now who are struggling to get an interview. So I'm a little confused in terms of the numbers that we're being told that there's a shortage, and then people who are going there doing the CompTI and what's going on?
So the problem is that there's lots of different nooks and crannies in cyber, and there's lots of demand, but the demand is uneven, and the demand is in some cases unrealistic. So, for example, there's pharmaceutical companies that some of our staff have worked for that have teams, 30 people who are on their red team, 30 certified engineers who can hack all day long. But most of the jobs in cyber aren't hackers. Yeah. And so what the job postings want, and I was looking at these for somebody just recently, they want someone who has cybersecurity experience and knows Okta. Well, Okta is an authentication platform. Or they want a cybersecurity person who knows SIM and has experience of at least X number of years with SIM, because they don't want an intern who they have to teach everything, because there's no one to teach them. They don't have the staff. They need the skill. And so what we should say is there's 700,000 open jobs for experienced cybersecurity people. And we can't make experienced people without internships.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's what we're trying to do. We do a lot with internships, and we try to help people, steer them in the right direction. But it's almost a chicken and egg thing.
Well, and the other thing is cybersecurity is a big topic. So lots of people go, I want to get into cyber. And you go, great. Do you want to be blue team, which is defensive? Do you want to be red team, which is offensive? Do you want to be purple team, which is a little bit of both? Do you want to be compliance, which is understanding laws and regulations and that sort of stuff? Do you want to be an auditor? I mean, there's hundreds of different subsects of jobs inside of cybersecurity where people go, oh, there's this massive shortage in cybersecurity. And you're like, but where? Is it?
It's like saying, I want to be in medicine.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So it's tough to know, even as a student when you're going into college, like, okay, I'm going to study cybersecurity, and they're going to teach you a little bit of everything, but you really do have to figure out now what my focus needs to be. Like, I want to be an offensive red teamer, or and you could specifically say, I want to be a blue teamer, defense, and I want to just write Yara rules to, understand what's being pushed off our network. Like, you could be hyper specific and find jobs all over the place, I'm sure. So part of that, I think, is the trouble as well. People are pretty general, which is good, but then nobody wants to hire them because then they don't have
I think they have to declare what they want to do, and that's hard because they don't know what they want to do. Or they want to do the thing that's the hardest. So I would think, and maybe I'm biased, I'm probably biased, is the actual hacking is the hardest thing. Because in order for us to train a hacker, there's usually like a 3-year internship after they've already mastered programming and other things. Because in order to be successful as a red teamer, you need to know all the buzzwords, even for things that you don't play with. You need to be as good at the databases as the database person, but that's not your specialty. You need to be as good at the web technology as the web developer, but that's not your technology. And so you have to be a mile wide and a foot deep. And so it's kind of something that you graduate into, but it's where a lot of kids want to go. Some people have a natural fluency for it, but they usually find out about them when they're arrested. But there are people who are really good at it, but it's hard to even get the right mentors and the right experience for that kind of thing. And you kind of have to play around to figure out whether you're good at it. Most people don't know about Okta or SIM or any of those things, those jobs. So we need to do a better job of educating them of what the market looks like. And the best way to do that is for educators to say, here's the job listings from monster.com this week. Let's walk through them and see what you might qualify for. Okay, this one says it's entry level, but it says 3 years experience. And so we have this mismatch. And we have the same thing in programming. For a long time, everybody needs to be a programmer. not all programmers are the same. There's C++ driver developers,
Sure.
which takes decades to be good at. There's multi-threaded programmers. There's light scripters,
Right.
and they each have different things. But it's kind of like saying I want to work in medicine.
Right.
If everyone went and got the same degree in medicine, they would have trouble finding jobs because there'd be a whole bunch of those people,
Right.
and there wouldn't be any radiologists, and we'd still have the need for radiologists, but we'd have all these people waiting for medical jobs that took the A+ certification of medicine.
Yeah.
Right.
So I wish there was an easier answer, but the problem is we've oversimplified security and cyber, and so now people have expectations that are being
Right.
unmet.
Yeah, and a lot of people seem to really want to get into cybersecurity,
Yes.
but I think,
field.
Daune, you did a really good job at kind of, and you too, Patrick, okay?
Thanks.
You're good too. At really breaking down, like, hey, it's not just cyber and that's it. There's you could go into compliance. Maybe
Sure.
you're not really great at, being part of the red team.
Well, let's
Yes.
talk about the certifications, because that's a great place
Yeah,
to start.
that's-
So, in my opinion, and there's plenty of technical certifications that are great.
Oh, yeah.
One of my claims to fame is I got every Microsoft certification under the sun. I actually ran out of them at one point. I have 57 Microsoft
Oh, my
certifications,
goodness.
and I stopped taking them 20 years ago.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of certification as a way to put your money where your mouth is.
Yep.
When somebody asks me what should I do, I say you should start with Security Plus. It's terminology, 2FA, MFA. It helps you understand what the factors are. It helps you understand what SQL injection is. It gets you the base level. And in the U.S. military and in the government, you can't touch any system as an IT person unless you have at least Security Plus.
Right.
Okay. So then the next level is Certified Ethical Hacker. Again, people will say, well, that's just a multiple choice test. It is, but it makes you learn the right things,
Right.
makes you read the right book.
Yep.
And so those two are pretty much the certifications you're talking about.
Right.
But there's as Robert Frost said, the road and the wood diverged. And the path less taken is the hacking side because it requires so much.
Right.
But that's what a lot of people are drawn to. I want to hack. I want to break things.
Right.
That path usually leads through being a blue teamer, being somebody who, enforces policy, locks down systems. So there's that path. That involves learning technologies and learning how to, run the defensive software and working as a network administrator and all that stuff. Then there's the path of I want to be in compliance. I want to be an auditor. And those people, they go down the road of being a CISSP, which is the mother of all multiple choice tests. It's 5 hours,
Yeah, it's a
hundreds of
long
questions,
one. Yep.
and it's things like how many feet apart should the lights be around the fence perimeter of a secure facility.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's that kind of stuff. It's mind-numbing. We have a couple of those.
We do, and they
Yeah.
say they'd never take the certification
Right.
again because it's just so long
But
and arduous.
Mary, that's all she wanted to do.
Yep.
So some people, that's where they want to go, and they check the list. Now they have to know enough to know what the list is.
Right.
But they can be auditors, they can be compliance people, and then there's the hackers, and we'll talk about them for a second, since so many people want to go to there. There's a test that we use as a litmus test. It's not the only way. There's plenty of people who are great in this industry that don't take that. But the test is called the OSCP, and Daune was one of the first people I knew that had the OSCP. And it's a test where you get 24 hours to break into 5 systems they give you.
Wow.
Yep.
There's no multiple choice. There's no partial credit. Well, there's partial credit, but I think if you burn it, then you get less
pretty much.
credit. So, but you have 5 systems. You have to get a user key that they've hidden on the system.
Yeah.
You have to have user access and an admin key. You have to have admin access to get them. There is no faking it.
That's it.
It's a proctored exam. They watch you. They listen to you.
For 24
It's 24 hours. And then you have to fill out a report, and it's
Which is the
pass-fail.
next 24 hours.
Wow.
What percentage fail?
48 hours. They're very close-lipped about the percentage,
Okay.
but I think it's high.
So Dwayne's an advisor to the company called
Yeah.
OffSec that provides that, and they're one of our big training partners.
Yes.
But that is there's no faking it. It's
Right.
real. So one of the things we do is, because it's expensive to take the test and study for it, we tell people, go do Hack the Box. Hack the Box is a website based in the UK that keeps 20 systems up at all times, and they rotate one every week, and you can hack them. And some of them are only hackable by 100 people ever. Rope was one. We got it, and I don't know, 200 people eventually got it
About
before
that.
they retired it. And others are easier, and you can cut your teeth on them. And once they're retired, people like IPSEC and other people on YouTube will do videos and walk you through them and teach you how they attack the
did it.
system. Some of the videos are 20 minutes long, like the first ones.
Sure.
Some of them are 6 hours long.
Oh my goodness.
And so, but it shows you what hacking really is. And so I would say if you don't want to do the OSCP or you do want to do the OSCP,
Right.
you go after those kinds of things, and you
Right.
cut your teeth at that kind of thing.
It sounds also, excuse me, complicated. I think I want to be part of just a compliance team.
Yeah, but there's no easy button when it comes to this.
Yeah, I mean, and this is good because I don't think that some people probably understand, just, the whole process
Sure.
of what you have to go through and why it might be, not as easy to just get a job just like that.
Yeah.
Because there's some companies who are, like you said, they're looking for someone who can jump in, right?
Yep.
They don't have the trainers or mentors to help out. But yeah, oh my goodness.
Or you at least have to show that you're a self-starter. At least
Yeah.
show that when you show up, you're going to keep digging into this and devouring it. They want somebody who's going to be an animal, who's going to be running as fast as they can to get the technology, because they realize, the organization, I don't have time to train you. You have to train. I can give you a budget. I can give you offset training. The resume gets you the interview. The interview gets you the job.
Right.
And so if someone comes and says, I live and breathe this stuff. I don't have a lot of experience, but I got a hack the box account. I've got this many points. I'm doing this. I listen to this. I listen to Pat and Dwayne's podcast, right? SecurityThisWeek.com.
Well, let's talk about that too. Let's make sure we talk about the podcast as well.
So, and I agree with that. The other problem in cybersecurity is it's one of the few industries, I think, that by minute things are changing. So like in medicine, there's trials, there's why these drugs matter and why they work and whatnot.
But the human body's the same.
Right. In law, I'm sure, as you can tell us, like there's precedents, and there's, you're always studying different legal precedents. In cybersecurity, while we're on this show right now, I'm sure there have been about 6 or 7 new security breaches that have happened that are just mind-numbing.
And when a 0-day comes out, that means something that was secure, was believed to be
10
secure,
minutes ago is now
no
not.
longer secure.
Yeah, right.
So you have to have that almost crazed mentality of being, of constantly looking at
That
this.
movie Maze Runner? The world keeps changing on you?
It's that. I mean, my wife is always like, I love that you love what you do, and I hate that you love what you do, because every time I'm looking at something on my phone, it's always like, what's the latest breach? What's the latest hack? What's just coming out now? And you need to, unfortunately, really love that if you want to get into this field, because you need to understand that it's just constantly changing. You are going to learn something new every day. And every day you're going to feel completely stupid. Because it's
I can't believe I didn't figure that out. Why did
Yeah, exactly. It happens all the time.
So we have a podcast at SecurityThisWeek.com. It's Daune and I. I tend to be the militant in the conversation. I mention tomahawks and cruise missiles occasionally. Daune is the hacker who sometimes gives hacking advice, which we sometimes frown upon. And Carl is our co-host, who's a very funny programmer who's been around for a long time. And we do a weekly podcast where we talk about the hacks and the events, and we pick about a half a dozen news stories, and we talk about them for about 35 minutes, 40 minutes.
That's awesome.
And my catchphrase is that convenience is the enemy of security.
Yeah.
And I say it every episode. The more convenient it is, typically the less secure it is.
Right. Someone once said they look for the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's what they love to do.
Car door that's unlocked.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
So what are some of the myths with cybersecurity that we need to know about?
How many hours is the show?
We're almost wrapping up, but we can throw in some of these myths.
So the first one we've already exposed, which is that you can just go get a job in cyber and be a hacker and be all this stuff. We've helped people with stalkers and people who were doing threats and things like that. We try to help out when we can. And I can't tell you how many times we've had some kid threaten someone, say, "I'm a hacker," and we find out they work at the Tasty Freeze cone somewhere down the street, and they live in their mom's basement, that kind of thing. Right. So that's one of the myths, is that there are armies and legions of really good hackers. Most of the companies that do what we do have a couple of really good people, and they have a bunch of people who run tools and say, "What's this mean?" And they say, "It means this," and that's fine. We need that. Those companies do a good role, but real hackers aren't everywhere.
Well, and one of the other myths we run into is, I bought it from a company, it must be secure, right? I bought my Ring doorbell from Amazon, it's got to be secure, right? Yeah. Because I'm sure Amazon looks at the security of that. Well, chances are
Once a decade at least.
right. Chances are when you're buying like IoT devices, like your refrigerator that connects to Wi-Fi, your camera that connects to Wi-Fi, your, you name it, that connects thermostat that connects to Wi-Fi.
Your dog collar.
There's no guarantee that the company you purchase that from has any idea what they're doing in cybersecurity,
Right.
and has ever reviewed it. Now, they don't want to be the one with the bad mark on them that there was some sort of hack that allowed them to breach your home, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're pouring millions of dollars into it. So I've seen that as a fallacy when I talk to companies. They're like, oh, we've talked to some banks where they're like, hey, we bought those IP cameras. I'm sure they're secure and fine. And we're like, okay, but did you ask them? Did you go through that
Right.
process? Did you test them? And they're like, no, we bought them. They're okay. And you're like,
Right.
okay. So that would be another thing is just because you bought it from even sometimes a reputable company, there are still steps you need to do to make sure that you can put them in. and
Just
implement
because
them
an app's in
securely.
the App Store
Oh my God,
doesn't mean
that's
it's
so
safe.
bad.
Right.
Every week we talk about
Yes.
apps in the App Store that were malicious and
Oh, yeah.
that stole people's data. And
Yeah.
because they're in the App
And
Store,
track you and can turn on microphones and can all that stuff is
Yeah, and I think
scary.
Apple recently had to remove hundreds
yeah,
off
and they
off
keep doing
apps.
it.
Yep.
But not until hundreds of thousands of people have downloaded them
Yes.
and
Right.
been owned. Here's another one that I hate to give this advice, but it's the real advice. We talked about this on our last show. When you get a new phone, so convenient
Yes.
to download from the cloud and just replace that phone. But it's more secure to install the apps one by one, and because if someone gets on your phone,
Right.
they're not going to get off if you just
Yeah,
restore from
copy all the
backup.
apps from backup.
That's
yeah.
a great point. I know, because that's what happens,
painful.
right? When
Yeah.
you go to Verizon, they're like, "Oh yeah, did you have everything backed up?"
Right, we
Yes.
just copy it
All
all.
right. So for me, I'm like, "Oh, that's the
That's
you
super
know?
convenient.
Right.
Especially if I
yeah.
go to the store with my 3 kids, I'm like, "Hurry up! I want to
Convenience
get
is
out
the
the
enemy
door."
of security.
Right, exactly.
So
It's
it's
done.
painful. And the same is true of computers. So when I get a new computer, which is, not too irregularly, I rebuild it from scratch. I install all the applications from scratch. I decide, and I get a faster, better system. But I also get rid of anything that I might have picked up along the way.
Sure.
So it's only the paranoid survive is a little bit too extreme.
Right. Yeah.
But if it's
so,
convenient, it's probably hurting your security.
Right.
but how do just ordinary people like Flo and the other residents? How do they protect themselves better? What are that's 3 things?
Oh, well, so number one, I would say is password managers.
Yep.
So that for the normal human being, not in
Right.
cybersecurity, although we're in cybersecurity and we use password managers all the time.
All right, hold on, time out.
Yes.
Because wasn't there a password manager
Yes.
that was just hacked recently?
LastPass. Yes.
But they didn't get anyone's passwords.
Right.
Okay.
They got
Yeah.
source code and they got other things, but they didn't get anybody's passwords because these companies, based on what we've seen, because they've several of them have been hacked.
Oh, yeah.
But in each case, they got assets of the company. They didn't get assets
Okay.
of the individuals.
So a lot of the very well, like I use 1Password. A lot of the very well-known password managers, what they'll do is they'll encrypt the data with your own private keys. So that data can't be read by the company. And it was one of the questions where when you have sensitive data with a third-party company, who at your company has access? Most of the password managers will say, we don't have access to your passwords. If
Oh,
you
good.
lose your password, you're out of luck. You're going to
Right.
have to go reset it everywhere. But the password manager is one of my biggest recommendations to anybody. Have it on your phone, have it on your computer. Anytime, like I don't know any of my passwords. I know none of them. They're all 20 to 30 characters.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah. Right? And it's because I allow it to manage my passwords and
Right.
reset them. And when one of those passwords shows up potentially on a breach, it lets me know and it tells me to go change them. That would be
Right.
my number one recommendation.
So let's talk about password managers for a second. So a password manager, just to clarify, is a software package, LastPass, 1Password, those
1Password,
kinds of
yeah.
things. There's older ones like Whisper32, they've been around for a while, that lets you write your passwords down, which we've always said, don't write your passwords
Right.
down. But we're in a world now where every website needs a password.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not allowed to reuse passwords.
Yeah.
And we're not Svengali who can remember, every the
Right.
name of everyone in the audience. So you have to write them down. And the best way to write them down isn't on a pen and paper. It's to use a software package that has encryption to store them and to save them and to protect them, that is protected by a long password. And so that my next advice is, whenever you can select a password, longer passwords are better
Yeah.
than up in lowercase. And
Right.
so a song lyric from Fleetwood Mac is far better than, @ double S, $sign. That stuff
Yeah.
doesn't work as well. It's good. The more
Yeah.
character variants you have, the better. But really it's the length that makes a difference. So for example, we, in part of our work, have a crack cluster. We have a set of graphics cards. Basically, it's like a Bitcoin mining rig, but we use it for cracking passwords. So when we get a hash, which is the way passwords are actually passed around, we have to do a brute force attack against. We have to try every possible password. And you'd think that would take forever, but we can do about 5 billion a second.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that means we have a dictionary of about 5 billion passwords that have been found in all the breaches throughout all the last 10, 20 years. And so that's our dictionary. So if your password is the same as any password in any of those breaches, we'll find it in 1 second.
Right.
And then if it's not that, and it's 8 characters long, what's it take, 4 minutes, 3 minutes?
About 4 minutes.
4
That
minutes.
is-
Yeah.
So, but if it's 20 characters long, unless it's all numbers, we won't get it this year.
Right.
It'll take us years to get it. And so longer passwords are far more secure than all the crazy stuff that we put ourselves through.
Cat lover 101.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things, I recently hosted a LinkedIn Live event, just talking about cybersecurity. And my guest made a great point that some people wait for the attack to happen versus actually doing both offense and defense.
Yes.
And the other myth that I've also seen attending a LinkedIn audio on cybersecurity is that a lot of people tend to think, especially small businesses, that, this only happens to the big companies.
Yeah.
That used to be true.
Yeah.
It's not anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No, we see a lot of small organizations getting targeted every day.
Yeah.
Easier to make money from a small organization by ransomwaring them or finding usernames and passwords or sensitive data than it is to break into Ford Motor Corp.
And we're hearing about more and more small companies going out of business as a result.
Because of that, yeah. And because one, it's some of this, it's the reputation and the trust. It's always hard to kind
It's
of
just they
build
can't
those
survive
back.
the downtime.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then they've got to pay a ransom that they can't afford because the ransoms aren't cheap.
No.
And once that data is stolen and they have not backed it up or
Yeah.
anything, it's
We
gone.
know many companies that get hit more than once in a year because they don't actually get rid of the virus and they restore it from their backup. And then they get ransomware again. It's not like it's, you paid before, don't worry about it.
No, you're
Right.
good.
You pay again.
Right.
And so it's a very dangerous game.
So what's the takeaway? Like what should people, especially small businesses, because it seems like they get hit the hardest, and for individuals as well, because with the texting, we're seeing
Everyone
that.
needs to make getting more security savvy a hobby. There's just no other way. They have to learn more about it.
For simple things, like for, let's say, individuals, have a password manager and make sure that they're long and complex passwords.
Yeah.
If whatever service you're using supports multi-factor authentication, turn it on. So make sure you're using either the Google Authenticator or SMS to your phone or something along those lines. It's now the bare minimum to turn on multi-factor authentication with things like
It's
that.
not bulletproof, but it's much more bullet resistant.
And if you receive an email and you feel like you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that invoice or whatever it is, don't do it.
Right.
Never click on anything in email. So those are the simple things I would tell.
When you are
friends.
asked by anyone, whether you know them or not, to do something, to call a number that you don't know, to click on something, to open a document, to do anything, use a second avenue of communication and ask them, did you send this? Flo,
Right.
I got an email from you with the latest invoice. Did you send it and is it, this at this time? No, I didn't send that. Okay,
Right.
delete.
Yeah.
Right.
I just got a message, a voicemail from a bank, a major bank, telling me to call a phone number about a security incident. And this bank has called me before and told me to do this. And I call the number on the back of my credit card and I say, I was told there might be a security incident. Let me transfer you. And when the fraud department says, oh yeah, that was us, I yell at them. Because it's like, you should never tell me to call a phone number
Right.
other than the one on my back of my card. You should say, call the number on the back of your card.
Right.
So we try very hard not to send emails that say,
Yeah.
please click here to join.
Yes.
We tell them to go do a search on the web browser to find our site and then do it there.
Right.
We need to stop training people to do the thing that we don't want them to do when it's not when it's dangerous because they
Right.
can't tell.
Right.
Yeah, and I kind of had an incident with my bank as well where somebody had called. I was at the library trying to make copies and I was using my card. And they flag that.
Yep.
And they called me, but it was just so weird. Like, I'm
Right.
asking the person, I'm sorry, who are you again?
And they ask you to authenticate yourself.
Right, and
Right.
I'm
It's
like,
like,
no,
you
I
called
asked-
me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I ended up saying, you know what? No, I'm not doing anything, and got off the phone and ended up calling the bank separately.
Good.
And they were like, yes, no, that was one of our people. And
Okay.
I'm like,
Yell at
okay.
them.
I guess.
Right. Yeah. No, oh my God, this has been fantastic. You guys are awesome. You're welcome back anytime
Thank
that you
you.
want to talk cybersecurity. I think this is a fantastic episode.
Right.
Really.
Glad you
wanna-
liked
it. Me too, yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact that we talked about cybersecurity and how people can get into and what they need
We
to
need them to.
look at.
We need
Yeah.
people to get
Yeah.
in. So it's bad to see that people are frustrating trying to get on board.
Yes.
But it is a lot of work. It's not as simple as they think, but it's worth it. It's
That's
rewarding.
right. Wow, this is great. A great episode learning about cybersecurity. Patrick, Daune, thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
here.
having me. Thank you,
For everybody else, thank you so much for watching another episode of Get Tech Smart. Stay tuned for more. And don't forget, I have a partnership with the Granite State Collaborative. So they're helping me amplify my message across of New Hampshire. So make sure to check out your local channels as well.